the sound of boots scraping against weathered wood, was the only warning before the woman collapsed on Harrison Garrett's front porch, her body hitting the planks with a thud that made his coffee cup rattle against its saucer. Harrison had been sitting in his usual chair, watching the sun climb over the Colorado peaks like it did every morning in the summer of 1882, when the stranger appeared at the edge of his property. At first, he thought the heat was playing tricks on his eyes, making the figure shimmer and waver as it stumbled up the dirt path toward his ranch house. But then he heard the gasping breaths, saw the way she clutched at fence posts and rocks for support, and he was on his feet before his mind could catch up to his body. By the time he reached the porch, she was already down. Her dress was torn and dusty, the pale blue fabric stained dark with sweat, and something that might have been blood. Her face was flushed red despite the pallor underneath, and when he pressed the back of his hand to her forehead, the heat nearly burned him. "Jesus," he muttered, scooping her up in his arms. She weighed next to nothing, all bones and fever, and her head lolled against his chest as he carried her inside. Harrison had lived alone in this house for 3 years now, ever since he had bought the land and built the ranch with his own 2 hands. He had stopped expecting company, stopped hoping for it even. At 32 years old, he had convinced himself that solitude was what he deserved. The women in Granite had made it clear enough that a man with his reputation was not husband material. Too rough, they said. Too angry. Too damaged from whatever had happened before he showed up in Colorado with nothing but a horse and a haunted look in his eyes. He had given up on finding a good woman, had decided that the best he could hope for was a life of hard work and harder whiskey, with maybe a trip to the saloon girls in town when the loneliness got too sharp. But now there was this stranger in his arms, burning up with fever, and something in his chest that he thought had died a long time ago stirred back to life. He laid her on his bed, the only real bed in the house, and began peeling away the layers of dirt and clothing to assess the damage. There were cuts on her hands and feet, blisters that had burst and bled. Her lips were cracked and bleeding too, and when he tilted her head to pour water into her mouth, most of it just ran down her chin. But she swallowed some, her throat working reflexively, and that was enough to give him hope. The fever was the real problem. It radiated off her in waves, and her breathing was shallow and quick. He had seen this before back during the war, back when he was a different person with a different name. Heat stroke, infection, exhaustion, or some combination of all 3. People died from this. Died quickly if they were not careful. Harrison stripped her down to her underclothes, trying not to notice the curves of her body or the way her dark hair spread across his pillow like spilled ink. This was not the time for those thoughts. He soaked towels in the cold water from his well and draped them across her forehead, her chest, her arms. Then he sat beside the bed and waited. She did not wake that first day, or the second. Harrison kept vigil beside her, changing the cold compresses, forcing water and broth between her lips whenever she seemed close to consciousness. He checked her wounds and cleaned them with whiskey, wrapping them in strips of torn bedsheet. At night, when the fever spiked and she thrashed and cried out in delirium, he held her down gently and spoke to her in a low voice, saying things he could not remember afterward, but that seemed to calm her. On the 3rd morning, her eyes opened. They were green, he noticed. The color of new grass after spring rain. She stared at him for a long moment, confusion and fear warring in her expression, and he raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "Easy now," he said. "You have been sick. 3 days now. You collapsed on my porch." Her lips moved, but no sound came out. He helped her sit up enough to drink, holding the cup to her mouth while she gulped water like she had been lost in the desert. When she finally pulled back, gasping, Some of the wildness had left her eyes. "Where am I?" Her voice was rough, barely more than a whisper. "My ranch. About 5 miles outside Granite, Colorado. Name is Harrison Garrett." He set the cup aside and studied her. "What is yours?" She closed her eyes, and for a moment he thought she had passed out again. But then she spoke. "Anna. Anna Norton." "Well, Miss Norton, you want to tell me how you ended up half dead on my doorstep?" Anna opened her eyes again, and this time there were tears pooling in them. "I was running. From my uncle. He wanted to marry me off to a man in Denver, a business associate of his. I said no, but he did not care, so I took a horse and ran." She swallowed hard. "I thought I could make it to Pueblo to my mother's sister, but I got turned around in the mountains and the horse threw me when we startled a rattlesnake. I walked for 2 days, I think. Maybe 3. I do not really remember." Harrison felt that old familiar anger kindle in his gut, the kind that had gotten him in trouble more times than he could count. Men who forced women into things they did not want, who treated them like property instead of people. They made him see red. It was part of why he had left his old life behind, why he had come west to start over. "Your uncle know where you were headed?" he asked. She shook her head. "I did not tell anyone, just left in the night. He will be looking for you. I know." Her voice broke, "but I could not do it. That man, he was cruel. I saw how he treated his last wife before she died. I would rather die in the mountains than live like that." Harrison stood and walked to the window, looking out at the land he had carved from wilderness. The sun was high now, beating down on the scrub grass and scattered pines. In the distance, his small herd of cattle grazed near the creek. It was not much, but it was his. He had built this life with the specific intention of never answering to anyone again, never being responsible for anyone but himself. But when he turned back to look at Anna, small and fragile in his bed, he knew he could not just send her away. "You can stay here until you are healed up," he said. "After that, we will figure out what to do about your uncle." Relief flooded her face, and she tried to sit up further. "Thank you. I can work. I can earn my keep. I am good with horses, and I can cook and clean and rest first," he interrupted. "We will worry about the rest later." Over the next week, Anna grew stronger. The fever broke completely on the 4th day, and by the 5th she was able to sit up and eat solid food. By the 7th day, she was insisting on getting out of bed despite Harrison's protests. He found her in the kitchen on the morning of the 8th day, attempting to make breakfast. She had wrapped one of his shirts around herself like a dress, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows, and her feet were still bandaged. She looked ridiculous and determined and somehow beautiful, and Harrison had to look away. "You should be resting," he said. "I have been resting for over a week." She cracked an egg into the pan with more force than necessary. "I need to do something useful or I will lose my mind." He wanted to argue, but he understood that feeling all too well. So instead he sat at the table and let her cook, watching the way she moved around his kitchen like she belonged there. It was strange having another person in the house. Strange, but not unpleasant. They ate in comfortable silence, and afterward Anna insisted on washing the dishes while Harrison went out to tend the livestock. When he came back hours later, sweaty and dusty from mending fences, he found the house transformed. She had swept and scrubbed, beaten the rugs and washed the windows. Fresh bread was cooling on the counter, and something that smelled like heaven was simmering on the stove. "You are supposed to be taking it easy," he said, but there was no real heat in his voice. Anna turned from the stove, a wooden spoon in her hand and a smudge of flour on her cheek. "I am taking it easy. You should see me when I am really working." Despite himself, Harrison felt a smile tug at his lips. It felt foreign, that expression. He could not remember the last time he had genuinely smiled. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Harrison would rise before dawn to work the ranch, and Anna would have coffee and breakfast waiting when he came in. She would spend the day doing lighter chores, mending clothes and tending the vegetable garden he had neglected, cooking meals that made his simple ranch house feel like a home. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, talking about nothing and everything. He learned that she was 24, that her parents had died when she was young, that her uncle had taken her in out of obligation rather than love. She had been educated at a boarding school back east, but her uncle had pulled her out when she turned 18, saying that too much education made women unmarriageable. She loved books and horses and the smell of rain on dust. She had a laugh that sounded like music, and she was not afraid of hard work or speaking her mind. Anna learned that Harrison had come from Missouri, that he had fought in the war on the Union side, that he had seen things that still haunted him in the quiet hours of the night. She learned that he was gentle with animals and terrible at cooking, that he read the Bible sometimes but did not go to church, that he had a scar across his ribs from a knife fight he would not talk about. She learned that beneath the rough exterior and the walls he had built around himself, there was a good man who had been hurt too many times and had forgotten how to trust. 3 weeks after Anna collapsed on his porch, Harrison rode into Granite to buy supplies. He had been putting it off, not wanting to leave Anna alone and not wanting to answer questions about the woman living at his ranch. But they needed flour and coffee and other essentials, and he could not avoid town forever. The general store was busy when he walked in, full of the usual mix of ranchers and miners and townspeople. Harrison kept his head down and gathered what he needed, hoping to get in and out without attracting attention. But as he was paying, he heard a voice that made his blood run cold. "Excuse me, sir, but I am looking for someone. A young woman, dark hair, green eyes, about this tall." The man speaking was standing near the door, showing a photograph to anyone who would look. He was dressed in an expensive suit, his face hard and his eyes calculating. "Her name is Anna Norton. There is a reward for information leading to her return." Harrison forced himself to stay calm as he collected his change. The shopkeeper, old Thomas Grayson, was watching him with curious eyes. "Sounds like that girl staying out at your place, Harrison," Thomas said, his voice carrying across the store. The man in the suit turned, his attention fixing on Harrison like a hawk spotting prey. "Is that so? You know where my niece is?" Harrison met his gaze steadily. "Do not know any Anna Norton. Thomas here seems to think otherwise." The man took a step closer. "I am William Norton, and I have been searching for my niece for nearly a month now. She ran away from her responsibilities, from a very advantageous marriage that I arranged for her benefit. If you are harboring her, I suggest you tell me now. Like I said, do not know her." Harrison picked up his supplies. "Now if you will excuse me, I have work to do." He made it to the door before William spoke again. "There is a $500 reward for her return." "That is a lot of money for a man like you." Harrison stopped but did not turn around. "Some things are not for sale." He heard the threat in William's voice. "I will find her, Mr. Garrett, with or without your help." The ride back to the ranch seemed to take forever. Harrison pushed his horse harder than he should have, his mind racing. William Norton was in Granite. It was only a matter of time before he came to the ranch, and when he did, there would be trouble. Anna was hanging laundry when he arrived, and the sight of her there in the sunshine, looking healthy and happy, made his chest ache. She turned at the sound of hooves and smiled, but the expression faded when she saw his face. "What is wrong?" He dismounted and told her everything. With each word he watched the color drain from her face, watched hope and happiness replaced by fear. "He found me," she whispered. "I knew he would eventually, but I thought I had more time." We need to get you somewhere safe. You have an aunt in Pueblo, you said. Anna nodded, but her hands were shaking. Harrison, if he catches me, he will force me onto the train to Denver. He will make me marry that horrible man, and I will never escape again. Something fierce and protective rose up in Harrison's chest. He had known Anna for less than a month, but in that time she had become important to him in a way he could not fully explain. The thought of her being forced into a marriage, being trapped and unhappy, was unbearable. "He will not take you," Harrison said, and he meant it. "I will not let him." "You do not understand. My uncle is a powerful man. He has money, connections. He could make trouble for you. Let him try." Harrison took her hands in his, steadying them. "Anna, I have faced worse than some rich man from Denver. You are safe here." She looked up at him, and something passed between them, something that had been building for weeks without either of them acknowledging it. Harrison felt it like a physical force, pulling him closer, and he saw the same awareness reflected in Anna's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Why are you risking so much for me?" The answer was simple and terrifying. "Because I care about you, more than I should, probably, more than is wise." He released her hands and stepped back, suddenly uncertain. "I know I am not much. Just a rancher with a dark past and no prospects. But if you want to stay here, if you want to make this place your home, I would be honored to have you." Anna was quiet for a long moment, and Harrison felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He had not meant to say all that, had not planned to lay his feelings bare, but the words had come anyway, and now they hung in the air between them. "Harrison," Anna said finally, "I have never met anyone like you. You took me in when I was dying, asked nothing in return, treated me with more kindness and respect than any man ever has. The truth is, I do not want to leave. These past weeks living here with you have been the happiest of my life." Hope flared in his chest. "Then stay." "But my uncle, we will deal with your uncle." Harrison took her hands again, more firmly this time. "Together." Anna smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and Harrison felt something shift in the world. He pulled her close, and she came willingly, wrapping her arms around his waist and pressing her face against his chest. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the afternoon sun, while the laundry flapped on the line and the mountains watched in silent approval. 2 days later, William Norton arrived at the ranch with 3 men. Harrison watched them approach from the porch, his rifle resting across his lap. Anna was inside, out of sight, but he could feel her presence behind the door. "Mr. Garrett," William called out as he reined in his horse. "We meet again, Mr. Norton." Harrison did not stand. "You are trespassing." "I am looking for my niece. I have reason to believe she is here." "Already told you, do not know any Anna Norton." William's expression hardened. "Do not play games with me. I know she is here. Multiple people in town have seen a young woman matching her description at your ranch." He gestured to the men with him. "These gentlemen are here to help me retrieve my property." "Property?" Harrison stood slowly, his hand moving to the rifle. "She is not property. She is a person with her own will. She is a foolish girl who does not know what is best for her. I am her legal guardian, and she will do as I say." "No." The voice came from behind Harrison. Anna stepped out onto the porch, her chin raised despite the fear in her eyes. "I will not." William's face flushed red. "Anna, stop this nonsense. You are coming back to Denver with me right now." "I am not. I am staying here with Harrison. You are engaged to be married. The wedding has already been arranged." "I never agreed to that engagement. You cannot force me." William dismounted and took a step toward the porch. "I can and I will. You are my responsibility, and I will not have you living in sin with some nobody rancher. Now come here before I drag you." Harrison moved to stand between them, the rifle now pointed at William's chest. You will not touch her." The three men with William reached for their guns, but Harrison did not flinch. "I would think very carefully before you do that. This is my land, and I am well within my rights to defend it and anyone on it. You pull those guns and I will shoot, and the law will be on my side." William's eyes narrowed. "You are making a grave mistake." "No," Harrison said. "The mistake would be letting you take her." For a long moment, everyone was frozen. Then Anna spoke again, her voice steady despite the tension. "Uncle William, I am 24 years old. I am of legal age, and I do not need your permission to live my own life. I do not want to marry your business associate, and I do not want to go back to Denver. I am staying here, and there is nothing you can do about it." "You ungrateful little. That is enough." Harrison cocked the rifle. "Time for you to leave." William looked between Harrison and Anna, his face twisted with rage and frustration, but he was smart enough to recognize a losing battle. "This is not over," he said finally. "I will be back with the law." "The law will tell you the same thing I am telling you," Harrison replied. "She is an adult. She can make her own choices." William mounted his horse with jerky, angry movements. "You will regret this, Anna. Both of you will." They watched the four men ride away, dust rising behind them in a brown cloud. Only when they were out of sight did Harrison lower the rifle, his hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Anna touched his arm. "Thank you." He turned to look at her, this woman who had stumbled into his life and changed everything. "Did you mean what you said about staying?" "Yes," she said simply. "If you will have me, Anna." He set the rifle aside and took her face in his hands. "I have spent the last 3 years trying to convince myself that I was better off alone, that I did not need or want anyone in my life, but you have shown me I was wrong." He took a breath. "I am not good with words, and I do not have much to offer, but what I do have is yours if you want it. My home, my protection, my heart, all of it." Tears spilled down Anna's cheeks, but she was smiling. "I want it. I want all of it." Harrison kissed her then, pulling her close and pouring everything he felt into that kiss. It was tender and fierce all at once, a promise and a beginning. Anna kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers tangling in his hair, and Harrison felt something inside him that had been broken for a long time start to mend. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Anna laughed. "I suppose we should get married properly, just to make sure my uncle cannot cause any more trouble." "Is that a proposal, Miss Norton?" "I believe it is, Mr. Garrett." "Then I accept." They were married 3 days later by the pastor in Granite, with Thomas Grayson and his wife serving as witnesses. Anna wore a simple blue dress that the women in town had helped her make, and Harrison wore his only suit, carefully brushed and mended. It was not a fancy ceremony, but it was real and true, and when the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, Harrison felt a peace he had not known in years. William Norton did come back, as promised, but the local sheriff confirmed what Harrison had told him. Anna was of legal age and had married of her own free will. There was nothing William could do. He left Granite in a fury, and they never heard from him again. Life on the ranch settled into a new normal. Anna proved to be as capable as she had claimed, working alongside Harrison from dawn until dusk. She handled horses with an ease that amazed him, gentle but firm, and the small herd they owned seemed to respond to her in a way they never had to him. She expanded the vegetable garden until it covered twice the space it had before, and she learned to preserve food for winter, lining the shelves in the root cellar with jars of vegetables and fruits and jams. But more than that, she brought joy back into Harrison's life. She sang while she worked, filling the house with music. She read to him in the evenings from the books she had managed to bring with her when she fled Denver. She made him laugh, something he had thought he had forgotten how to do. And at night, in the privacy of their bedroom, She showed him what it meant to be loved completely and without reservation. Harrison had thought he knew what it meant to be happy. He had thought the satisfaction of a day's hard work and a job well done was enough. But Anna had shown him there was more. That happiness could be shared meals and quiet conversations, stolen kisses in the barn and lazy Sunday mornings in bed. That it could be looking across a room and catching her eye and knowing without words that she understood him completely. The first winter was hard. The snow came early and stayed late, and there were times when they were snowed in for days at a time. But the house was warm, and they had plenty of food stored away, and Harrison found that he did not mind being trapped inside when Anna was there with him. They spent those long winter days talking and planning, dreaming about the future they would build together. When spring came, they expanded the ranch. Harrison bought more cattle and hired a young man from town to help with the work. Anna started raising chickens and convinced Harrison to let her try breeding horses. Her instinct for horseflesh proved to be excellent, and within a year, they had sold 3 foals for more money than Harrison made in a season of cattle sales. On their first anniversary, Harrison surprised Anna with a trip to Pueblo. It was the first time she had seen her aunt since running away, and the reunion was tearful and joyful. Her aunt, Margaret, was a kind woman who was relieved to see Anna safe and happy. She gave them her blessing and made them promise to visit more often. On the way back to Granite, Anna told Harrison she was pregnant. He nearly drove the wagon off the road. "You are sure?" "I am sure." She was watching him carefully, as if uncertain of his reaction. Harrison pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to her, his hands shaking as he cupped her face. "Anna, that is wonderful. That is the best news I have ever heard." Relief flooded her expression, and she laughed. "I was worried you might not be ready." "I have been ready for this since the day I met you," he said. "I just did not know it yet." Their son was born the following spring, on a morning when the meadowlarks were singing and the wildflowers were beginning to bloom. Harrison paced outside the bedroom while the midwife from town attended to Anna, his heart in his throat every time he heard her cry out. But when the baby's wail finally cut through the air, strong and healthy, he felt tears spring to his eyes. "You can come in now," the midwife called, and Harrison practically ran into the room. Anna was propped up against the pillows, pale and exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle, red-faced and squalling. "Harrison, meet your son." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the baby. His son. It seemed impossible that this tiny person was his, that he and Anna had created this life together. "Can I hold him?" Anna smiled and carefully transferred the baby to his arms. Harrison held his son for the first time, feeling the weight of him, the warmth, the absolute realness. The baby stopped crying and opened his eyes, dark blue and unfocused, and Harrison felt his heart expand until he thought it might burst. "He needs a name," Anna said softly. They had discussed names for months, arguing good-naturedly about what to call their child. But now, holding his son in his arms, Harrison knew exactly what his name should be. "Henry," he said. "Henry Thomas Garrett, after my father and yours." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "That is perfect." Raising a child on a ranch was not easy, but Harrison and Anna managed. Henry was a good baby, happy and healthy, and he seemed to love the outdoors as much as his parents did. As soon as he could walk, he was toddling after Harrison, trying to help with chores and asking endless questions about everything he saw. 2 years after Henry was born, Anna had another baby, a daughter this time. They named her Grace, and she came into the world quietly, with big, watchful eyes that seemed to take in everything. Where Henry was boisterous and fearless, Grace was calm and thoughtful, and Harrison loved them both with a fierceness that sometimes scared him. The ranch continued to grow. They built a bigger house to accommodate their growing family, with real bedrooms upstairs and a parlor that Anna filled with books and comfortable furniture. They hired more help, and Harrison taught the workers everything he knew about ranching and horses. The land that had once seemed so empty and lonely was now filled with life and laughter. But the best moments were still the quiet ones, when the children were asleep and Harrison and Anna sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. Sometimes they talked, sharing the small details of their days. Sometimes they simply sat in comfortable silence, her hand in his, content just to be together. On one such evening, 5 years after Anna had collapsed on his porch, she turned to him and said, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had not found your ranch that day? If I had kept walking and ended up somewhere else?" Harrison was quiet for a moment, thinking about it. "I try not to," he admitted. "The thought of you dying out there in the mountains or ending up somewhere you were not safe, it makes me feel sick." "I think about it sometimes," Anna said, "about how lost I was, how hopeless I felt. I truly thought I was going to die. And then I saw your ranch, and somehow I found the strength to keep going just a little bit further." She squeezed his hand. "You saved my life, Harrison." "You saved mine too," he replied. "I was not dying from fever, but I was dying all the same. Just slowly, from loneliness and bitterness and the belief that I did not deserve anything good. You showed me I was wrong." Anna leaned her head against his shoulder. "We saved each other then." "Yes," Harrison said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I suppose we did." As the years passed, the ranch became one of the most successful in the area. Harrison's reputation changed from that of a loner with a dark past to a respected rancher and family man. People came from miles around to buy horses from Anna, who had developed a breeding program that was producing some of the finest stock in Colorado. Henry and Grace grew up strong and capable, learning to ride and rope and work the land alongside their parents. On their 10th anniversary, Harrison took Anna back to the spot where she had collapsed all those years ago. The porch had been replaced as part of the expansion, but they both remembered exactly where it had been. "I was so scared," Anna said, looking at the place. "I could barely see, barely think. All I knew was that I had to keep moving, had to find help. I remember sitting in my chair, drinking coffee and thinking about how I was going to spend another day alone," Harrison said. "And then I saw you and everything changed." Anna turned to face him, her hand coming up to touch his cheek. "I love you, Harrison Garrett. I loved you when I was feverish and delirious, when you were just a kind voice in the darkness. I loved you when you stood up to my uncle and refused to let him take me. And I love you now, after 10 years of marriage and 2 children and more happiness than I ever thought possible." Harrison pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I love you too, Anna. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, the best thing that ever will happen to me." They kissed there on the spot where their story had begun, and Harrison marveled at how far they had come. He had thought he was past hope, past the possibility of love and family and happiness. He had given up on finding a good woman, convinced himself he did not need one. But then Anna had collapsed feverish on his front porch, and she had given him everything. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, they could hear Henry and Grace playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the wind. Smoke rose from the chimney, promising a warm house and a good meal. The mountains stood tall and proud against the evening sky, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied. It was not the life Harrison had planned. It was better. Years continued to roll by with the steady rhythm of seasons changing, bringing with them new challenges and deeper joys. Henry grew into a strong young man with his father's work ethic and his mother's way with horses. At 18, he was already taking on more responsibility around the ranch, talking about his own dreams of expanding their operations into new territory. Grace, at 16, had her mother's intelligence and determination, and she had announced her intention to become a teacher, wanting to bring education to the children of ranching families who lived too far from town. Harrison and Anna supported both their children's ambitions, proud of the people they were becoming. They had built something lasting, not just in the ranch itself, but in the family they had created. The values they had passed down, the love they had modeled, it would continue long after they were gone. On a cool autumn evening in 1897, 15 years after Anna had first arrived, the entire family gathered for dinner. It had become tradition, this Sunday meal where everyone put aside work and came together. Henry had brought a young woman named Sarah, a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, and Grace was full of stories about her first weeks assisting the schoolteacher in town. Harrison sat at the head of the table, watching his family, and felt a contentment so deep, it was almost painful. Anna caught his eye from the other end of the table and smiled, that same smile that had captivated him all those years ago. Her dark hair was streaked with silver now, and there were lines around her eyes, but to him, she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her. After dinner, after the children had said their good nights and Henry had driven Sarah home in the wagon, Harrison and Anna returned to their favorite spot on the porch. The night was clear, the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet. "He is going to marry that girl," Anna said, settling into her chair with a contented sigh. "I know," Harrison replied. "You can see it in the way he looks at her, like you look at me. Exactly like that." Anna laughed softly. "We are going to be grandparents before long." The thought filled Harrison with wonder. Grandchildren running around the ranch, another generation to carry on what they had built. It seemed impossible and inevitable all at once. "How did we get so lucky?" he asked, not really expecting an answer, but Anna had one. "I do not think it was luck, Harrison. I think it was grace. I was led to your ranch that day for a reason. We were meant to find each other." Harrison reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. Even after all these years, the touch of her skin against his still sent a warmth through him. "I was so angry at the world back then," he said. "So convinced that I was meant to be alone, that I did not deserve anything good. If you had not shown up when you did, I might have stayed that way forever." "But I did show up," Anna said, "and you did not turn me away. You could have, you know. You could have taken me to town, left me at the doctor's office, washed your hands of the whole situation. But you did not." "I could not," Harrison corrected. "From the moment I saw you lying there, something in me knew. This was important. You were important." They sat in silence for a while, comfortable and companionable, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl hooted, and the wind rustled through the grass with a sound like whispered secrets. "Do you remember what you said to me while I was fevered?" Anna asked suddenly. "I was not fully conscious, but I remember your voice. You kept telling me to hold on, that I was going to be all right, that you would not let me go." Harrison did remember, though he had never mentioned it. Those long dark hours when he thought he might lose her before he ever really had her, when he had made promises to a woman who might not live to hear them. "I meant every word. I know you did. And somehow, even in my delirium, I knew it too. That is why I held on. Because your voice was an anchor in the darkness, something solid to cling to when everything else was slipping away." Harrison felt his throat tighten with emotion. After all these years, Anna still had the power to move him to tears. "You are the strongest person I have ever known," he said. "The way you survived those days in the mountains, the way you stood up to your uncle, the way you have built this life alongside me. You amaze me every single day." "We built it together," Anna insisted. "I could not have done any of this without you." "Then I am grateful every day that we found each other. That fate or providence or whatever force guides this world brought you to my door." Anna stood and moved to his chair, settling herself in his lap the way she had done 1,000 times before. Harrison wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "Promise me something," Anna whispered against his neck. "Anything. Promise me that no matter how many years we have left, whether it is 5 or 20 or 50, that we will never take this for granted. That we will remember how precious it is, what we have found." "I promise," Harrison said solemnly. "I could never forget. Every morning I wake up next to you is a gift. Every day we spend together is a blessing. I know that better than anyone." Anna kissed him then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 15 years of love and devotion. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining with tears, but she was smiling. "Take me to bed, Harrison Garrett," she said. "I want to fall asleep in your arms the way I have every night since you saved my life." He stood, lifting her with him, and carried her inside. The house was quiet, warm, and welcoming in the darkness. Their children were safe in their rooms. The ranch was secure, and the woman he loved more than life itself was in his arms. It was everything Harrison had never dared to hope for. And it had all started on a summer morning when a fever-stricken woman had collapsed on his front porch, and he had made the choice to help her instead of turning away. As they lay together in the darkness, Anna's breathing evening out as she drifted towards sleep, Harrison thought about the man he had been before she came into his life. Bitter, lonely, convinced that happiness was for other people. He had given up on finding a good woman, had decided he did not deserve one. But then she had arrived, more dead than alive, and everything had changed. She had brought light into his darkness, hope into his despair. She had shown him that he was worthy of love, that he had something valuable to offer. Together they had built a life that exceeded his wildest dreams. "I love you," he whispered into her hair, though she was already asleep. The ranch continued to thrive, and true to Anna's prediction, Henry married Sarah the following spring. The wedding was a grand affair by their standards, with people coming from all over the territory to celebrate. Harrison stood beside his son during the ceremony, remembering his own simple wedding in the church at Granite, and he saw in Henry's eyes the same joy and wonder he had felt. A year later, their first grandchild was born, a robust baby boy they named Harrison after his grandfather. Holding that tiny infant, seeing his own name carried forward into another generation, Harrison felt a completeness he had not known was possible. Grace fulfilled her dream of becoming a teacher, taking a position at the new schoolhouse that had been built halfway between Granite and the surrounding ranches. She was a natural educator, patient and creative, and the children loved her. Anna rode out once a week to visit her, bringing supplies and news from home, and Harrison knew that mother and daughter treasured those times together. As Harrison moved into his late 50s, he began to slow down, letting Henry take on more of the heavy work around the ranch. But he still rose early every morning, still made his rounds checking on the livestock and the land. The work was in his blood, and he could not imagine a life without it. Anna aged gracefully beside him, her beauty deepening rather than fading with the years. She spent her days tending to her gardens, working with the horses and spoiling their growing number of grandchildren. Sarah and Henry had given them 3 more grandchildren, and Grace had eventually married a young lawyer from Denver, giving them 2 more. The ranch house was often filled with the sound of children's laughter, and Harrison loved every chaotic moment of it. On their 20th anniversary, Harrison took Anna on a trip to Denver. It was the first time she had been back since running away, and he could see the mixture of emotions on her face as they walked the familiar streets. "It feels like a different lifetime," she said, looking at the building where her uncle's office had been. It was a bank now, and William Norton had long since moved away, driven out by scandal and bad business dealings. "Like it happened to someone else." "In a way it did," Harrison said. "You were a different person then. We both were." They stayed at the finest hotel in the city, attended the theater, and dined at elegant restaurants. It was a far cry from their simple life on the ranch, and while they enjoyed the novelty of it, they were both eager to return home. The mountains were calling them, and the life they had built was waiting. As they sat on the train heading back to Colorado, Anna leaned against Harrison's shoulder and sighed contentedly. "Thank you for that. It was wonderful, but I am ready to be home." "Me too," Harrison agreed. "As much as I enjoyed the trip, nothing compares to our land, our family. Our life," Anna added, looking up at him with those green eyes that still had the power to stop his heart. "Our life," Harrison echoed, and he kissed her there on the train, not caring who saw. The years continued their steady march. Harrison and Anna celebrated their 25th anniversary surrounded by family and friends, a testament to the life they had built and the love they shared. The ranch had become one of the most successful in the state, known throughout Colorado for its quality horses and cattle. But more than the material success, what Harrison treasured most was the legacy of love they had created. Their children were good people, kind and hardworking, and their grandchildren were growing up with the same values. The ranch would continue long after he was gone, not just as a business but as a home, a place where family gathered and love was paramount. On a quiet evening in the summer of 1907, Harrison and Anna sat on their porch, a ritual they had maintained for 25 years. Henry was running the ranch now, doing an excellent job of it, and Grace had just published her first book, a collection of stories about life in the West. Their grandchildren were scattered across the property, playing and laughing as children should. "We did good, did we not?" Anna said, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Better than good," Harrison replied. "We did great." Anna reached over and took his hand, her fingers still fitting perfectly between his. "I was thinking today about that morning I showed up here, how terrified I was, how close I came to giving up before I reached your ranch. What would have happened if I had stopped a mile earlier or if I had missed the turn to your property? But you did not," Harrison said firmly. "You made it. You were meant to make it." "I was meant to find you," Anna agreed, "and you were meant to find me." Two broken people who somehow made each other whole. Harrison brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I was not just broken, Anna. I was given up. I had convinced myself that love was not for me, that I was too damaged, too angry, too far gone. You proved me wrong about everything. And you showed me what real love looks like," Anna said. "Not the kind my uncle tried to force on me where I was property to be traded, but real love where I was valued and respected and cherished. You gave me that gift, Harrison." Every single day for 25 years. They sat in silence for a while, watching as the sun sank below the mountains and the first stars appeared. It was peaceful, this moment, perfect in its simplicity. They had weathered storms and faced challenges, raised children and built an empire. And through it all, they had never stopped loving each other. "You have any regrets?" Harrison asked, a question that had been on his mind lately as he reflected on their life together. Anna considered it seriously. "No," she said finally, "not a single one. Every choice I made, every path I took led me here to you. How could I regret that?" Harrison felt warmth spread through his chest. "I feel the same way. If I could go back and change anything, I would not. Because it all brought me to that morning when you collapsed on my porch and changed my life forever. Changed both our lives, Anna corrected with a smile. They stayed on the porch until the stars filled the sky and the air grew cool. Henry came by to check on them before heading home to Sarah and the children, and Grace stopped to kiss them both goodnight before retiring to the guest room where she was staying. The ranch settled into its nighttime quiet, the sounds of crickets and distant cattle the only noise. Finally, Harrison and Anna rose and went inside, hand in hand, the way they always did. They had established routines and rhythms over the years, comfortable patterns that brought them both peace. But there was nothing routine about the love they shared, the passion that had not dimmed despite the passing years. As Harrison lay in bed that night, Anna curled against his side, he thought about how different his life could have been. If he had stayed in Missouri after the war, if he had never come to Colorado, if he had been in town that morning instead of sitting on his porch. The number of things that had to align perfectly for him and Anna to find each other was staggering, but they had found each other. Against all odds, despite all obstacles, they had come together and created something beautiful. A love story that had started with a desperate woman and a lonely man, and had blossomed into a legacy that would last for generations. "What are you thinking about?" Anna murmured sleepily. "Just how much I love you," Harrison said, "and how grateful I am for every moment we have had together." Anna pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "Then we are thinking the same thing." They drifted off to sleep together, the way they had for 25 years, in a house filled with love and memories, on land they had tamed and nurtured together, surrounded by the family they had created. Harrison Garrett had given up on finding a good woman. He had thought his chance at happiness had passed him by, that he was destined to live out his days alone and bitter. But then, Anna Norton had collapsed feverish on his front porch, and she had given him everything he never knew he needed. A partner, a love, a reason to believe in second chances and new beginnings. And as the years stretched out before them, filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with laughter and love and the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, Harrison knew with absolute certainty that saving her that day had been the best decision he ever made. Because in saving her, she had saved him right back.